A big thank you to Tessa, who's agreed to speak to me about women's issues and feminism, etc. I think so. Right from the get off, a lot of the stuff pisses me off that's out there. And I can understand, there's a lot of criticisms about feminism, etc. You look at the stuff on social media or on YouTube, and I don't blame people for getting pissed off about it. This clip, for example.
Part of patriarchy. Part of patriarchy. I don't know if you're noticing a theme. Patriarchy. Anyways, I'm not done. Not done. Shut the fuck up.
Then this guy here, it's slightly unconnected, but this dipshit going on about white males. It's quite famous. You might have seen it already.
You're fucking a white male!
The most cringe-worthy one of all, quite famous. I'm sure you've all seen it before. The Allah Akbar feminist on the women's march. This one here. So this is the stuff that people are seeing, and they're getting wound up about it. And I just thought, I've heard you speak about the issue before, and it was challenging. And I just think there's so many nutcases, particularly the one with the red dyed hair. She's called Red Bertha or something. Lunatic. It's just these, and they are out there. This social justice, identity politics stuff. And I just thought, well, I remember the discussion you gave was actually quite interesting and challenging. And I just thought maybe, I want to say some of the things that I'm concerned about, but maybe you'd be able to at least give a more rational take on stuff.
Yeah.
I suppose my position is, we've got people out there dying, we've got people out there going insane, we've got people out there struggling in poverty, we've got people out there who are concerned about Islam, we've got people who are concerned about immigration, and we've got the social justice warrior thing, we've got the identity politics where they're going on about everything. There's some people who think that within Britain, the only people who are truly, you can discriminate against are white people, particularly white males. And I actually think that's true to some extent. And again, then you've got the batshit left, and coming under a lot of criticism. I'm a left winger, as you are yourself, and I don't blame people for getting pissed off. It's embarrassing. I'm just, where are the voices of reason? Are they going to make sense out of this situation that we're in? People are moving to the populist right. As much as I disagree with that, I don't blame them. I can understand why they're doing it. And I just thought, and then you see these feminists. I've defriended women on my Facebook, just harping on about the patriarchy and toxic masculinity and I just defriended them. I just can't tolerate it, and it's just like you're just making it worse and worse and worse, opening yourself up for criticism, making the left look even more ridiculous. Anyway, I just thought you could maybe just give your thoughts on it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, like you've said, you're quite right, is that a huge number of people are living in worse and worse conditions. You've got hundreds of thousands of people relying on food banks at the moment. Even nurses, like, the wages are so low, they're being forced to go to food banks. And rather than pointing the finger at the banks who were bailed out with billions of pounds of taxpayers' money, and have not really had to pay any of that back. Instead, it's been the public, the working class, who have had that cut from their services, from the jobs, from the wage packets. It's meant that what the rich in society are willing to, what the crumbs they're willing to give working class people, we're being forced to fight over. And obviously that's affecting different sectors of society in different ways. So, for example, women are maybe being more affected by austerity because things like cuts to women's refuges, domestic violence centres, but also things like benefits and childcare, living allowance and that kind of thing, is going to affect women more strongly. Maybe women are going to be forced to sort of like give up their jobs in order to go back home to like take care of the kids because they can't afford nurseries and daycare. In that sense, you know, women are kind of being more oppressed under capitalism and by the super rich, than men who maybe don't traditionally have the responsibilities of caring for elderly relatives and kids. But white working class men are also suffering, and we were saying earlier that the suicide rates for men in recent years have shot up tremendously, because there is this huge pressure to go out and be the breadwinner, and that if you're not earning money, if you're not able to have the sort of like latest flashiest gear or whatever, that you're not good enough, that you've not got a value in society. And men are kind of forced into competing with their mates in a way that's really damaging for them. And I think that's why we're seeing a rise in male suicide. But if we want to understand these problems and how we fight against them, I think it's a big mistake that a lot of feminists might make to say, well, this is my struggle, it's nothing to do with you. Because it's the same system that's oppressing us all. And it's the same, I think, with, you know, fighting for, like, ethnic minority rights or LGBTQ rights. We're all fighting an oppressive system, and we stand a far better chance of doing that successfully if we come together and have a united struggle. If, like you say, with other left groups, at the end of the day, it's not going to be like individuals or small groups that can change society. It's going to be mass movements. It's going to be huge numbers of people coming out on the streets, building in their trade unions, taking collective action together. And, you know, we're in Leicester, you know, it's a very multicultural population. You couldn't have a functioning trade union movement that wasn't bringing together people from, you know, Indian backgrounds, Polish backgrounds, Turkish backgrounds. And that if they actually want to, you know, fight against the system, fight against the bosses not giving them wage rises, that's predicated on there being a united struggle of those people. But at the same time, I think you've got to recognise working class people's fears, and if you ignore the fact that people are angry about the inability to get a job, the inability to get on the waiting list for housing, you know, that there's so few council houses available, that no, you know, government or council seems to do anything about it. You know, it's easy to think, well, who do I blame? You know, maybe it's immigrants coming in that is pushing the demand higher, but in reality, the Tory government is choosing not to spend taxpayers' money or even collect tax from the super rich like Google, Amazon, Boots and so on, who evade and avoid paying that billions and pounds in tax every year, that could be going to be spent on housing, building schools, hospitals and so on. And so it's like that political choice by the Tories and the people who represent the interests of big business and capitalism, that are meaning we're scrapping here at the bottom over what has been left to us by the people who are hoarding all the wealth in society. And the only way to get over that is not to kind of allow them to play divide and conquer between us, but come together as a mass force, and take society out of the hands of the rich, take the control out of the hands of the rich, and run by working class people wherever they're from.